because financially, it just was like, oh, I just don't know how to do this thing that is going to require me to like show up in these ways that I just can't. So my model is now, I do what I have to do what I love, and build and grow as much as I can. But yeah, this is a real thing. I lived in Brooklyn for 15 years. When I had my son, I was like, I don't see this, and I live someplace now where I work from home exclusively. So it doesn't matter how close I am to a city, but that's why there's value to like connecting with people online, because you get so isolated.
Yeah, you do.
Easy to like kind of disconnect. So I'm happy.
I'm so glad to see you guys too. Yeah, I'm so glad to see you guys too. You work from home, you just see your family. That's about it. Like, I'm an extrovert. I like to be out. I like to be what's popping, see what's popping, a new restaurant, and it's just, I don't feel free anymore to do that. It's just,
I've been getting out a little bit, like to date and stuff. But it's been outdoor restaurants, I'm like,
because you gotta protect yourself. Exactly, Tamika.
Yeah, dude's been doing the little Love Jones-esque type picnics and stuff. But we moved into the cold season, so I don't know what they're gonna do now. Maybe they're gonna be outside holding the radio up like they did. I'm like, let's say creativity.
But you know what? I think that's good for dating and for relationships, because I think it gives men a chance to be more creative and not go into this box like, okay, we'll go out to dinner. Okay, we'll go to a movie. Okay. But when you do those things often, you don't really get into deep conversations. You don't really get to know someone in the same kind of way. So I think it's kind of cool that we're having like these alternative ways of doing that too.
Yeah, no, I agree. Also, I do a lot more talking, because where you're not gonna be is in my house, and where I'm not gonna be is in your house. So what we gonna do? We gonna stay connected, and then another way is the way that we probably should have been doing it all along, which is
basically. I feel you, Tamika. That's a good point. They actually get to know each other. Wow.
It's a foreign concept.
Indeed. Hi, Tracy.
Hi.
Hey, dog.
Oh, I forgot I had to turn this on.
No, these lights. I love the lights.
Hi.
Oh, the lights.
She's giving me life right
Hi,
now.
everybody. Hi, Tamika.
Hello.
Malaysia. Hi. Daria. Tamika, good to see you.
Okay.
Good. Okay, so Tamika, I just want to let you know, we talked a little bit about this before. So at the beginning, once we start and let everyone in, I'm just going to introduce everyone, reading their bios, and I'll be sure to, make sure I state and spell your Instagram handle. And then
Instagram, let me see.
Okay, so I make sure it's at Mika, Mika, Mousy, Mousie. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Okay,
perfect. And so let me tilt this down a little bit. No, actually, I don't want that. Okay. What I was going to say is that I was just asking everyone, is there any point, having looked at the questions, thought about it, is there any point that you really want to make sure that you're able to get across today? So I'm trying to set up the question, the flow, so that you all are heard, what what's pressing, what's on your heart and mind to say, that you get to say it.
So I'll say really quickly that, I'm just here in support of women in general, in hip hop, but also just us, period. So I'm going to be punctuating. That's my whole general. I mean, I've been in hip hop for a long time, but I've also shifted out of it. Now I'm a mother and everything else. So from a point of answering specific questions, there's nothing in particular that I really want to hone in on. I'm just going to chime in where it makes sense, that's cool with you.
Oh. That's perfect. And then I want everyone to know that the last question I'm going to close with to wrap up is, do you feel that there is space for love or love ethic in hip hop? And, or if that feels heavy, also, if you could talk about like whatever your favorite hip hop song about love, no matter the gender of the artist, what's your favorite hip hop song about love? Sure. If that's, one of those be your options for the last question.
Yeah, no, I'll answer that. That's great.
Princess, good to see you.
You too, sis. Y'all ready?
We're ready.
No, we're ready.
Let's get it. Yeah. Oh my goodness, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah, girl. Some people said they had their notepads ready to bring the notepad, so it's gonna be good.
They gonna run it down. I like the ponytail. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's easy to have it all slicked back. Don't you have to worry about it, right? And I hope y'all can stick around and go to the after party on Twitch if you're able.
That sounds like fun, Tracy.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. DJ Reborn. I don't know if you've heard her before. Miss Lauren Hill's tour DJ. It's my friend.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, one of my friends. You know, we've been playing together. We used to do a party together for some years. Before all this stuff happened. So yeah, it'll be a good time. But it's like all hip hop, all women MCs. So it'll be good. It'll be fun. You have it in the background. Leave the tab open if you can. Lene, so good to have you. Good to see you, Lene.
Hi, you all. Sorry about that.
Hi, good morning. Well, good afternoon.
No worries. I'm just glad you can make it. So you're busy today because you were just at another panel, right, Lene?
Lene, you're muted.
Sorry, I just saw that. Yeah, I'm still here at this theater, but I'm trying to get folks to
Wow, thank you. You pushing through. I appreciate you very much.
I really am.
Yeah,
No. Definitely happy to join you all. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Okay, and real quick, I'm just gonna run through and introduce. So we have Tanika Anderson. Is Nancy here right now? Wait, I don't see her. Nancy Castellanos, Lene Denise, Daria Fennell, Aisha Paeva, and Walasia, NJ, but Walasia. So just so everybody knows who's on the panel. And the Grand Illusion 75, Kenji, he's the producer, so he's managing all the things right now. So
Kenji.
Oh, Lene, this is what I was asked. I just would ask everyone, is there any, based on the questions that we sent out for everyone to consider, is there anything that you really want to make sure that you get to say? Any point or something that you want to make sure you get to bring across to everyone today? Because I'm using that to kind of direct the flow on my questions.
Nothing in particular. The questions were rich, so I think so much will be shared.
Okay, awesome. And then I just want everyone to know that the question I'm going to close with, and this will go to everyone, is do you feel like there's space for love or love ethic in hip hop? And if that, people are like, oh, yeah, think about that. And then if not, you'd be like, what's your favorite song about love in hip hop, by an artist of any gender. So we're going to close with that.
Oops, sorry.
No,
Hi. Please go.
And you might see a cat jump up here, so don't even trip. That's one of my cats.
Nice, I love it.
Lene, how's it over there right now? How are things?
It's just I think that the Dutch feel like they are invincible, and so this was an in person. Like they're not mask or not. They've decided against mask as a general.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I
Oh,
mean, but overall, but also the numbers are lower. People, yeah, but it's just I stay in the house for the most part.
Mm.
okay. I'm surprised by that for some reason.
I
But
should
okay.
actually specify. I should specify. Like I see 1 in 3 people wearing a mask, and typically they're people of color.
That's a panel right there.
Yeah. Right. That's a whole ass history book.
There's so much in that. My goodness. Okay. Well, all right.
Yeah, it's the colonial footprint.
Yeah. What? Let's start. We're gonna get started. Mm-hmm. All right. What? Oh, this is wild. Okay. All right. I think we're gonna get started, everyone. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you to everyone who is here today for the story of WAP, female sexuality, female MCs and sexuality in hip hop. So I first want to give many thanks and a big shout out to the event producer, The Grand Illusion. You can follow them on Instagram at The Grand Illusion 1975. I'm your host, DJ Monday Blue. You can also follow me on Instagram at DJ Monday Blue, spelled just how it sounds. So we're going to start by introducing our panelists, and we have some very, very, very smart. I'm very excited. These women are so talented and incisive. So we're going to start with Tamika Anderson. She's a veteran hip hop writer who has worked at MTV, BET, and Vibe, and has written for publications such as XXL and The Source. She has profiled a variety of female MCs over the years, from Eve to Lil' Kim, to Jean Grey, to Rod Digga, and to Queen Latifah. You can follow her on Instagram at Mika Mousy, MIKA MOUSIE. Thank you, Tamika. We're so glad to have you today.
Nice to meet all of you.
All right, I'm gonna hold off. I'm gonna go down. Next is Lene Denise. Lene, the DJ scholar, she's a dynamic UCLA lecturer and was a 2020 Stanford visiting artist. She's coming to us from the Netherlands today. She has great academic insight into DJ culture and African diasporic social movements. And that set the stage for her new book, which is going to be released in 2021, Why Big Mama Thornton Matters. It's going to be published by the University of Texas Press. So yes, thank you, Lene. We're so glad to have you with us today. I'm looking forward to reading that book. Next up, we have Daria Fennell, a DMV native who heads the Daria Fennell Media Group, an entertainment, branding, and public relations agency. You can follow her on Instagram, the Daria Fennell Media Group. I'm going to spell a lot of it for you. So THEDARIAFENNELL Media Group. So please make sure you follow all these dynamic women today. Get your life. Next up, glad to have you.
Thank you.
Oh yes, glad to have you. Next up, we have Aisha Tayemba, also coming to us from the DMV. She's a mental health. I know a lot of my friends from school, from Stolen Morehouse, I used to call the DC Metro area, but I guess now, yeah, that's right, the area, but now we call it the DMV. So, but Aisha is a mental health advocate, a self-trained yogi, and a hip hop head who both defines and breaks boundaries with a point of view that blends the school of hard knocks realism with emotional intelligence to create commentary that moves the masses. All right, and you can follow her on Instagram at AYE_TYE. Aisha, we're glad to have you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Oh, so good to have you. Next up, we have Walasia MJ, but we're going to be calling her Walasia today. She's an Oakland-based music industry veteran. She has over 30 years in marketing, publicity, social media management, radio promotions, and she's also worked as a general manager. Currently, she's the vice president of Clear Label Media Group, which is a multimedia conglomerate owned by Tajai Massey of the Hieroglyphics fame. She is a founding editor of Complex Media and former editor of The Source magazine and Stress Mag. She also mentors young women working in the business of music, and people trying to do different positions, but she mentors women and helps them on their way. She's well known for her work as the A&R of Mad Villain by MF Doom and Madlib. And she's also a well-renowned cook to the stars, and she has a cookbook coming out next year, 2021, focusing on juicing, vegan and vegetarian cuisine, and healthful eating. So some good work to look forward to next year. You can follow her on Instagram at Noorscience, NOORSCIENCE. All right. And last but certainly not least, we have Nancy Nanlib Castellanos. She's a renowned visual artist and DJ coming from the Southern California area. She works in multiple mediums, including paint, or functional 3D sculpture, and makes products such as split mats and clothes. She's also a graphic designer and creates album covers. She did covers for Jake Dilla, Benny the Butcher, and Griselda, and also for Stone's Throw and Planet Asia. That's just to name a few of her clients. Her work has been worn by many hip-hop luminaries, including Questlove of The Roots. She's a graduate of the Beat Junkie Institute of Sound and is known for her dynamic mixes. You can follow her on Instagram at nanlibinvasion, NANLIBINVASION. Yes. So welcome to all of our panelists. Welcome to all of our guests. We've really been looking forward to having this discussion today. And so you just want to make sure if you have any comments or thoughts, please put them in the chat. There will be time for some Q&A after, we go through some questions, but you'll have time, for the participants to ask your questions, interact with the panelists today as well. And then again, from 2 to 4 after this, there's going to be an after party on twitch.tv, DJ Monday Blue. My sister in Spin, DJ Reborn, is going to open up. She's playing 2 to 3, and I'm playing 3 to 4. It's going to be fun. All women MCs, all hip hop. So it'll be a good time. So after the panel, it's the after party, y'all. Okay, so let's get this started. So the whole reason why the impetus for having this panel was because of the controversy. And I almost want to use scare quotes around the word controversy. I found it very, very funny. But when Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion released their song WAP, which is also known as Wet Ass Pussy, in August this year, it went to the top of the Billboard charts. And it became a talking point for a lot of people, right? Baby boomers, Generation X, millennials, Gen Z. A lot of people had a lot of things to say. There was a lot of criticism lobbed at both of those women for the song, despite the fact that as far back as 2 Live Crew, sexually suggestive lyrics have been a part of hip hop culture. And so people have a lot of feelings about it. There are some people who see WAP as a great thing, see it as an anthem. There are a lot of people on all parts of the internet, recreating the video, people of all different sexualities, gender identities. So that's what we're here to talk about today. What were your initial reactions to WAP, the song, the video, the discussion around it? So we're gonna go through all the panelists. I would like to hear from all of you. So let's start with Aisha. What did you think?
I knew you were gonna say my name. I got a lot of things that date me, but this is par for the course. Like, when you are a woman who loves hip hop, you've come across this in some version, in some way, over the course of this love affair. And so I was not surprised. From a lyricist perspective, I wasn't exactly blown away, but also I rocked with it. It was what it was. But more than that, there wasn't even a chance to really care whether you liked it or not, because the feedback that came immediately from it shifted to this whole thing where now you have to be, sourcing through think pieces as opposed to really engage in the music. So it was a difficult thing to even really get into. It took some time for me, to be honest.
Okay, very good. So not lyrically blown away, but but okay, there's a lot of discussion for sure. But let me make sure you said you were not blown away by the lyrics. You're just like, hey.
I wasn't blown away. I appreciated the concepts, but but I'm also not looking for, deep lyricism from either Meg or Cardi, to be honest. Like, that's just what it is. So that wasn't a diss. It just was what it was.
Okay, I totally didn't think it was a diss. Just want to be clear. Okay, thank you. All right, Darian, what did you think when you heard WAP, heard the song, saw the video, talked to your friends about it, folks on social media? What were your reactions to that?
I had to be honest. I'll be 47 next month, right? So although I'm an artist, I'm a creative, I'm open, I'm not open to everything. And it kind of offended me a little bit. I just thought it was way too vulgar for no reason. But I agree with Aisha. We're not thinking heavy lyrics from Megan Thee Stallion or Cardi B. So it is what it is. You're going to twerk a little bit. You're not going to go home woke. But I was a little offended. I have to be honest. Does it have to be that just open and vulgar and WAP? So, I grew up during Queen Latifah and Salt and Pepper and MC Light. So I don't know where we are in 2020 with females and MCs, but there's nobody really bringing it to me more, unless it's an underground artist. The big artist, Nicki Minaj, she's kind of not there. You don't see Nicki anymore. Megan Thee Stallion, I mean, I am a woman of a certain age. I'm still fly girl, but I am almost 50. So I see it a little different than some of the younger people, the youngies. So, yeah.
Okay. Gen X, I respect that Gen X viewpoint. I guess one of my questions for you is there, you said it was like too vulgar. So yeah. I'm wondering, is there a spectrum, like, you know what I mean? For instance, I'm like, let me ask you a question. Like Kaya, My Neck, My Back, right? Remember Kaya? My Neck,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
that was very vulgar
was this more vulgar than that, or like the same level, or I'm just trying to get a gauge, like where would?
Yeah, I that's a great question, Tracy. I would say they were both very vulgar, but it just feels like 2020 is just a very different time to me, hip hop wise. There's not a lot of female MCs on a large scale, on a large national visibility. And the ones that I listen to are more like the underground, like Dutch Rebel, like Rada MC from DC. Like they are amazing. So I don't know, I'm just not impressed. Like, I guess I'm also much older now. So, but I grew up on conscious and female MCs. So it's just kind of a catch-22. Like I said, I don't like to, monitor people's creativity. But after a while, it's like that's all you had to come up with in 2020 with everything going on in the world. WAP, really? So that's how I see it.
Okay, WAP in a nutshell for you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so next up,
you're welcome.
Malaysia, where are you with WAP? I'm really interested to hear what you have to say.
Peace. Well, for me, myself, I mostly work in underground and independent music. So it's interesting because women and femme artists have a lot more autonomy when they're independent, when they're underground. They have a lot more room to explore themes and to use lyricism, and also to be covered or to dress in the style that they wish to dress in. I feel like they allow a certain amount of women into the mainstream music industry. They expect hypersexuality. If you look at Inga Marchand, Foxy Brown, I remember Pumpkinhead, rest in peace, was a famous battle MC. He grew up on the same block. She was younger, but she grew up on the block with him. There were a lot of MCs. There were a lot of battles and ciphers taking place out on the block. And he said that she was one of the best, that she could take out almost any male MC from that area. And people would come from outside to come and battle, and she would often take people out. Now, he said that she would always have her hair in a bun with a hoodie and jeans, nothing tight, nothing revealing, no cake face. She was never a hypersexually dressing or acting woman or person. But when she did get into the industry, that was the first thing that they did for her, was to take her normal style away from her. And then I've heard actually that she only wrote maybe the first couple of rhymes that came out, like her appearance on LL Cool J's Who Shot You. And then after that they had ghostwriters for her as well. So they basically want to take women and mold them into kind of like a Barbie doll, or to only rap about sexual acts, or to tone down any lyricism that might uplift people or might educate people. This is by design. The mainstream industry, they're not going to allow, with very few exceptions, they're not going to allow a woman to come in and be very empowered in the lyrics that she's offering or in her style of dress. Meg Thee Stallion, when you hear her speak, she's going to college. She's in her books. She's not, I mean, obviously, yes, she likes to twerk. It's good exercise. I'm not angry at her about that. She dresses in a revealing way, but I don't know necessarily that that's always her choice. Maybe she might want to wear something, you know, less revealing, they're not going to allow it in the mainstream. They're going to say, well, it's part of your contract to be sexy. I've seen a lot of language and a lot of contracts that you wouldn't expect. And I think that a lot of women who have quote unquote made it, the Nicki Minaj's, the Little Kims, the Foxy Browns, they may not have started off that way. I mean, Cardi B, obviously, we kind of saw her persona from the get, but, you know, she was a professional strip dancer, and that was part of her whole get down to even get into the industry, was via being a stripper and being on reality TV after that. So from her, you know, I think, you know, it's to be expected, but a lot of women get crafted and molded into something that they're not because it's for sale. The sex is for sale.
Oh, I have a lot. Okay, that's a lot in there. I'm going to come back to you just to hold that thought about what you're saying, the sex is for sale, because I definitely have some comments and questions about that. Coming back, but hold that thought for a moment, because I want to still hear from Tamika, your thoughts about WAP in general. Like, where were you with WAP? How did you feel about it?
I bounced into my bathroom. I mean, the beat was hot. I was feeling it. Saw the video. I mean, the video was a little uninventive, but the song, cool. Yeah, I agree with some of the previous panelists. I wasn't especially moved by the lyrics, but you know, I don't have to be. At the end of the day, this is the train that comes through the station on time every time. A woman with provocative lyrics, a woman with provocative dress, and a woman who's unabashedly like sexual in a way that's like, I don't give a fuck what you think. And I defend a woman's abilities to express themselves as they want to. Now, do I think it's expected? Do I think it's formulaic? Do I think it sells? All those things. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And that's the reason why it's been done over and over and over again. It's the most expected thing that you can you can basically expect from a highly successful female MC over the years. You know, like most of the panelists, maybe. I also am, you know, old school, if you will. You know, definitely spent a lot of time over the years with female MCs who are coming from a different spin. You know, Queen Latifah, Jean Grey, Rod Digga, all of them. You know, really carve a space for themselves to even get a foot in the room based on what the men around them expected or what the industry expected. So, you know, Cardi B is not my favorite artist. It's all good, you know, didn't have to be. She's paid though. And she's also in a position to put people on, et cetera. You know, what does that look like? Unfortunately, it looks like signing like, you know, this is what we're gonna do. This is how we're gonna show up. This is the kind of impact we can rely on, especially in this administration, in this time. I mean, we have Me Too and we have Trump. Like, this is like one of those situations where everything is poised to be taken to another level anyway, in ways that we've seen before, but also that's unique to this time. So, you know, your question was, what was my thought about the song? You know, what was my thought about the video? What was my thought about that moment? And that was pretty much it. It was kind of like, I'm not expecting this. A surprise. You know, the train is in the station right on time.
So on brand, and definitely on brand for 2020 is what I'm hearing from you. Okay, thank you for that. All right, Lene. WAP, what are your thoughts? The video, the song, feelings. Is Lene here?
So, yep, I'm here.
Oh, okay, good.
Can you all hear me?
Yes,
so the moment I saw it, are you all able to hear me? Because my connection from Amsterdam is a little weak. Can you all hear me?
No, I can hear you really well. Yeah.
Okay, good. So, I mean, the moment I saw it and heard it, I knew that this would bring about important conversations around class and like respectability politics, because we're dealing with the rot notion of representation. But what came up for me immediately was like, yeah, certainly. I mean, I wasn't looking for lyricism. I wasn't looking for an amazing, you know, sort of cinematically graceful video. But what is interesting and important to me is that they place themselves in this long, you know, this lineage of dirty blues, you know, women who are absolutely agents in their understanding of their sexual prowess. Right? Like, and so it's a really interesting question around what access we have to the kind of agency that they do have. And I think sometimes to assume that they don't have agency maybe works against us. So I'm just thinking about the importance of like bigging up sex work in the way that Cardi B has, and what feels like to me a straight up like complete personal and intimate relationship with twerking that Megan Thee Stallion has, that feels like very much so about who she is, where she's from, who her girls are. And it feels like her power very much so is in her ability to, you know, work them thighs, work her as someone else would be working a typewriter, be working, you know, like whatever their profession is. But I was just thinking about questions around class and respectability and working class feminism.
That's a great question. So again, I'm coming back to that, okay, about, because I've heard like, there's definitely a class issue, respectability, politics, but I like that you're saying working, like this is a form of work. We're going to come back to that notion of work in a moment. So we're circling back, but I just want to make sure that we hear from Nancy, last but not least. Nancy, what are your thoughts when you first heard WAP, the song, the video? How did you feel about it? Thoughts? Nancy, are you with us? Nancy? Oh, okay. So I don't hear her right now. So we'll circle back. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read a little, just a short excerpt from an interview. Bell Hooks interviewed Little Kim in 1997, 7 months after Hardcore came out, all right, for Paper Magazine. Okay, so they're just having a conversation. So Bell Hooks says to Kim, she says, "See, to me, one empowers a woman when she can say, I want it and I'm having it for my pleasure," and talking about sex, right? Because, you know, she was talking about this, you know, the sexual nature, the overtly sexual nature of a lot of Kim's lyrics and songs. So Mel says, the other one, when you're having it for something else, that's not about power to me, but tell me why you might think it is. So Kim answers back, I feel money is power in certain senses. A lot of women out there are just giving it away. And then there are women that are selling their bodies, but they chose to do that. But this is how they make their money. And I don't see anything wrong with that. And the Bell Hook says, but now, Lil' Kim, you talk about being real, but let's get real. Most women that are selling their pussies aren't getting a lot of money. And Lil' Kim says they shouldn't be doing it. And Bell Hook's like, so do you feel like getting a lot of money fast makes you hungry for more money? And Kim says, yes, it does. Of course it does. So I'm just thinking about this conversation, right? A couple of questions here. So if you were looking at sexuality in hip hop, right, just as being a form of sex work, right? There are people who are now doing sex work online, OnlyFans. People who have OnlyFans sites during the pandemic. It's gone up, like skyrocketed. That's how people are making money from home, working from home, right? Trying to stay safe. Okay, and so it's choosing to use sex in that way, right? Or to use sexuality in that way, says, you know, women working in hip hop, is it a form of empowerment? Even if it's for a material aim, is that empowering? Is there some power to be found in sex and sexuality? And so I want to have Nancy, if you could answer that. I would like to hear from you first on that.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay.
Hi, there you are.
I was going through the whole motion, figuring out how to get you to hear me. Can you ask me one more time? I excuse me for that.
Sure. Okay, so just asking basically, so just thinking about this conversation that Bell Hooks and Lil' Kim had in 1997, right? So it's been a minute. Okay, it's been like over 20 years, right? Talking about, you know, her album, like her perspective on sex as empowerment, right? And Kim said, you know, she feels that money is power in certain senses, and that a lot of women are just giving it away. But then there are women that are selling their bodies, and they're choosing to do that to get money by selling their bodies. Okay. And then, you know, Bell Hooks is like, Kim, be real. You know, most women that are selling their pussies aren't getting a lot of money. And then Lil' Kim says, well, they shouldn't be doing it. And I think that whole conversation, I mean, this is just a snippet of the interview. It's really, really good, but the whole thing is worth reading. But I do wonder, you know, is there empowerment to be found in using your sex and sexuality, whether that's like sex work on OnlyFans, which a lot of people, more people are doing now during the COVID era, because of the pandemic and changes in limits and employment opportunities for a lot of people. When they mentioned, like, she was looking at Megan as, you know, a working woman, like in the tradition of the blues women who are working, right? singing raunchy lyrics, going on tour, but using that money to empower themselves, to better their lives and the lives of, you know, their family and friends, right? So I just wondered, how do you feel about that? Is there empowerment to be found in sex and sexuality? Is it always, you know, can a woman truly be in control of that, even if she's working in a male-dominated field or in a, you know, in a male-dominated world? I'm curious, so I'd like to hear from you about that first.
Power in your sexuality, and I definitely believe we can use it to advance ourselves, but you have to be mentally fit for that, because it's not for all of us. You know, it comes with a lot of side effects. So yeah, we can be empowered, we can feel beautiful, we can make that money, we can do all of these things, but we don't know how we're gonna be left later mentally. That's my only concern, because you're gonna have a lot of people coming at you, attacking you, bad relationships with men or women. But if you're strong and you can handle it, go for it. That's my opinion. For me personally, I'm more of a calm person, so I don't know that I'd have what it takes to take all that energy in. It's quite a lot for me personally, but to those women that can, honestly, my hat's off to you, because it takes a real strong mind to take all that in, because you're going to get criticized like crazy, judged, put down. The same way you're going to be exalted and praised. So it's like, you got to be strong for that type of energy. But yeah, we have a lot of strength in our body, just our breast alone. If you're dressed up real pretty, real cute, you have your breast a little up, you walk into a room, silence all over the room. It is what it is. We have a lot of power as women, and that's why men are sometimes intimidated by that. Women, our own kind, are sometimes intimidated by that, because we're beautiful species, all of us, every shape and form. That's how I feel.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Okay. Oh, awesome. Okay. So you said, like, you know, so has that happened to you? Have you had that experience of walking into a room for work purposes and you might have a cute outfit on, or, you know, what's deemed sexual by people, that's very, to me, very subjective, right? But have you had that experience in working in this field?
Yeah, sorry for speaking over you. My connection's kind of weird.
No worries.
When I work with hip hop artists, even those that I've admired, and I've got to do album artwork for them, and I've met them in their studio, you know, and as an artist, as a woman, you think, oh, I'm gonna go dress real nice. I wanna, you know, cause a good impression. I don't want to be forgotten, because I don't even rap or do anything like that. But I just draw them in the back scene. So let me do a good impression. So you know, I've gotten dressed up and I go in there and everybody's just, there's been moments where I've gotten no respect, or where the money issue wasn't discussed because they're just looking at how I look, or they pay you late, or they don't promote you. All these little things because you as a woman didn't fall into their standards of what they wanted you to do because of the way you look like, because they're already stereotyping you. Oh, she looks this way, she must be a groupie. Oh, you know what I'm saying? She's definitely going to do what I say because she's all up in here by herself, not knowing that, you know, a lot of us women out there are really trying to hustle our way through on our own. And sometimes our beauty is our way in sometimes, because it's like, hello, look, I can dress dope, I can do this. But some people don't take it like that. You know, they automatically assume that you're going to go and fuck. Excuse my language.
No, it's all good. That's real. That's very real. So, Malaysia, what are your thoughts about that then? I mean, again, hip hop has been a male-dominated field. It still is. I mean, there are certain women who are empowered within it. I think women who have made, you know, more money and gone on to do other things. I'm thinking especially like Rihanna, and not even rappers or MCs per se, but I'm definitely thinking like Rihanna, Beyonce, who people have gone on to do other forms of work, seem to have more power, because again, money goes back to capitalism and class, as Lene mentioned before, but money lends you more power in some ways. But you're talking about the independent artists who are able to be, you know, to not have to put forth an image they might not want to put out there or be comfortable with, or to focus more on their lyricism. Do you think that there's space for women to use sex and sexuality for empowerment in hip hop?
I definitely think there's space for it, especially if it is autonomous and if it is a choice. A lot of times before you get to the money, when they present a contract to you, when they present a certain album direction to you and an artistic direction of, well, we like the way you look. However, we're going to also add a lot of more makeup to you. We're going to add a lot more weaves and wigs. We're going to add a lot less clothing, more revealing clothing, higher heels. We want more sex out of you when we're packaging you. You know, a lot of times that's part of the major label discussion. And it's, you know, it's really a painful double-edged sword when you're a woman in the behind the scenes portion of the industry, as I've been an executive at different companies, some major, some indie. It's very hard as a woman to sit back and have a man who's powerful and who has control of the contract and control of the money. It's hard to be a woman in those conference rooms and let them dictate those things to a new artist, because oftentimes they might have gotten signed because of a specific ability, or because they've been heard in the clubs, or they've had a single that went well on the independent or the underground tip, and then they finally got into the major. It's crazy the kind of things that get dictated to women. Whereas I've sat in the same exact meetings with male artists, and the same A&Rs, the same team of people, sometimes even the same management. And the conversation is totally different. The conversation is never about, oh, well, we don't want you to rap about this any longer. We need you to rap about this instead. It's never about, oh, well, you come from the street angle, you're a blood. Well, we're sorry, you're not going to be able to wear red anymore. We're going to dress you a certain way. We're going to put you in suits and ties. I've never heard a conversation like that with a male artist. I just haven't. And so I think that it's, you know, it's something that as a woman going into it, sometimes it's to be expected. And even for me on the executive side, I have had certain bosses or supervisors or company owners who have said to me, you know, knowing that I'm Muslim, knowing that I cover up, they've asked me like, hey, you know, we're going to this big meeting at Universal Music Group. Is there any way that you could dress differently? Do you think you could sex it up a little bit? I've had people say that to me. And not even on the artist side. So they know, as Nancy said, they know the power of you going in there, showing skin and showing, showing sensuality and sexuality. So I think to piggyback off what Lene said, that really Cardi B and Meg Thee Stallion that we were mentioning earlier in regarding, the presentation of Wet Ass Pussy, the song and the video, they do have some agency and they do have some autonomy, because it's kind of part of their lifestyle and part of what they do on the everyday, whether they're in front of a camera or not. And so they have a lot more power, honestly, than a woman who comes in off her lyricism and then they do a 180 and they're like, oh, wait, hold on. We don't want you for your hoodie and your jeans and your Timberland boots. Hold on. We want you for what's under there. And we're going to present that to the world.
Oh, I hear you. And I hear what you're saying too about you've never had experience of a male artist being asked to change the way they dress, right? Changing you like from your jeans or whatever your colors you're wearing, right, to a suit and tie. However, I just wonder, because I just wonder if it's the nature of how patriarchy functions in society, where it intersects also with capitalism, is because I'm thinking about the change in the content of a lot of hip hop in general, like in that late 80s, early 90s era, like it's saying, going from, Public Enemy, even like X-Clan, but more quote unquote conscious rap, right? More visibility of like, I guess more backpack alternative rappers, like crews like A Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, Hieroglyphics, Souls of Mischief, to like when Dre came out with The Chronic, and then getting more into quote unquote the West Coast gangster rap. Like NWA was coming up around that time too, but The Chronic I feel like really changed things, and the tenor and the tone to me for a lot of hip hop, the content lyrically anyway, for men changed. So I'm just wondering, is that a function of the business itself and capitalism and how, you know what I mean? But it just, we're seeing the impact and the way it plays out is different because of patriarchy, right? And I'm not sure. I wonder about that. Like, I mean, I do think that some men, and it's hard to say, do men have agency too? Because I've heard a lot of debates about that, right? Do men have agency in the court? Do they have to start, not talking about Black power Black history, Black consciousness, and start talking about, slinging drugs, shooting up folks, whatever, pimping or what have you. I'm just curious. I don't know. Does anybody have any thoughts about that? Does anybody see any parallels there? Do you think it's just totally different?
Totally. I do just want to say the conversation about agency tends to be very gendered, obviously, right? When we're not thinking about the tropes that are reinforced by Black men. I mean, it's interesting to me to just sit with that we are rarely talking about agency and cis men. And the assumption is that they have full control over their careers. I mean, I think you just laid it out, Tracy. But yeah, I just think I just think we should acknowledge that question of the assumption that women have less control, which feeds into the conversation that Biggie was writing for Lil' Kim, that Ice Cube was writing for Yo-Yo, that like whoever these men are, that they are the agents, and rarely victims of the sort of corporate push for reinforcing the Black person, but male in particular, as a hypersexual being, as a violent being, right? So there's an interesting history that requires us to kind of have a balanced reading on what agency is within the music industry.
Yeah, I really think about that too. Yeah, because it is like, I don't know, like I'm actually not even sure, because as far as I know, Meg doesn't have any ghostwriters, correct? Like she writes, as far as I know, she writes her lyrics. I don't know, like that stuff sometimes is revealed years after. But I am wondering about her agency, especially, I'm going to come back to Meg. I'm going to come back to that in a moment, because I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But I think the question of agency is important. So for instance, do you think like an artist, I'm thinking of an artist that has sexual lyrics as a woman, right? But presents differently. It's covered up, young M.A., right? And more current artists, more recent artists, right? And if you listen to the lyrical content of her songs, it's very hypersexual. And she's, in her videos, her images, she's sexualizing women. However, she is also a woman. She's queer. So I just wonder, does that complicate the agency piece too? You know what I mean? Just because you're covered up, does that mean that, what does that mean that a woman is also sexualizing women within hip hop? I'm just very curious about that. Any thoughts on that?
I think that one's a little tricky, because young M.A. is masculine presenting. And so to a degree, it still aligns with men and male domination over women's sexuality in hip hop music. So it's a blurry line, but I think that the alignment kind of catches you off guard and allows people to either accept it in the way that they've accepted it from men, period, or disregard it because they don't necessarily care based on their own identification and not being queer. So they're, it either has nothing to do with me, or they still talking that same shit that I'm interested in when I hear men talk about it, because it still devalues, debases, belittles, mistreats, et cetera, women who are femme presenting.
That's a very interesting point. Well, that's true too. But recently also, a couple of weeks ago, Meg and I almost missed this, but someone pointed it out to me, so I was glad to know. I didn't know this, but Megan Thee Stallion came out and said that, she's looking for a girlfriend, that she's interested in having a relationship with a woman as well. She's like actively recruiting girlfriends, and she talked about the kind of woman, that she finds, the aesthetic that she finds pleasing in woman. And so Meg is very femme, right? Like lots of makeup, long hair, or whatever, and sexual lyrics. I mean, however, most of her lyrical content, she's, as far as that I'm aware of, and I'm thinking just very quickly, she talks more about sex with men. But I didn't know, but I wonder, does that complicate, for anyone, her sense of agency, or your ideas about her agency over her lyrical content or her image, especially knowing that she too is also queer?
We have to see it. We have to see it go down. I don't know if I've seen that yet to be able to, assess it for myself, or even to see how other people are assessing it. I have not seen that. Now I do know that it happens, but I haven't seen it in terms of lyrical content yet.
But I mean, so the actual video, right, WAP, has this interesting homoerotic subtext, right? Where they are flirting with sexual fluidity. That's one thing. But I'm also recently, I don't know whose page it was or what timeline situation it was, but there was a video where Megan was like twerking on this young person who appeared to be queer as a birthday gift, who appeared to be queer and a cis woman, right? Like, so that certainly there is no fear of expressing this kind of, you know, sexual fluidity and queerness. I feel like, but that was a huge part of the WAP video, was it not? Was there like this sort of homoerotic subtext there?
Yeah, now that you were saying it, there was actually, they were like, you know, yeah, they were. Yeah, there definitely was actually. You're right. Between Sheila and Megan and Cardi, you're absolutely right. Yeah, no, yes, that's true.
And I mean, within that context, I do understand that there's a history of this male gaze and this notion of two women together, right? That they could be playing into. But still, just to kind of have that as a part of their own discourse, this kind of normalization of this homoerotic piece, I think was important.
That's not new though. If you look back to the video for Push It, Salt and Pepper were doing it. It didn't go as far, but Salt and Pepper were doing the same thing. But the words
it doesn't feel new.
Yeah, the words were still related to sex with men though. So it's still this visual and auditory confusing situation that's happened, and you get to choose which one you're getting in on, but they don't really come together. You don't merge the two of them.
But even with the blues and thinking about some of Ma Rainey and Bessie Smith's earliest stuff, they were absolutely talking about sleeping with each other and men for the most part. You know, like there was the combination, like there's a history of that sexual ambiguity, right? But I do hear you that leans towards heterosexuality and very specifically the male gaze in terms of their understanding, or the gaze's understanding in lesbianism as an extension of pleasure for straight men. I do get that. But I just want to say there is that history of blues women whose body of work, lyrical work, is largely composed of their relationships with men, but also having these conversations about their sexual relationships in particular with women.
Outside of us in this particular 40-ish age range, 40 to 50 age range, I'd be curious how many of Cardi and Meg's core stan group or fan group, whichever way you want to say it, are even familiar with blues history in that way to make that kind of connection.
I'm talking to a few of my cousins sometimes about music and culture and their thoughts about it, and they're like, they're early to mid 20s. So I guess, what is that, like Gen Z maybe, older Gen Z? I do get the sense that there's a lot of history that they don't know. But I wanted to go, Tamika, I noticed in the chat, you mentioned, you were talking about kind of like the capitalism and like Megan Cardi and their presentations of, like, I guess what they mentioned, like the homoeroticism and like their imagery, right? So could you speak about that a little bit more, please?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just kind of ties into some of the points that were made previously about capitalism. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like you've got the strategic plan, and it's to get as much money as possible. So to appeal to as many groups as possible. I mean, essentially, you know that this is what you're trying to do in terms of expanding your reach, in terms of your marketing, and to increase your financial bottom line. So does it make the most sense to narrow yourself in terms of your scope, in terms of appealing to certain maybe subset of a group, or is it more lucrative for you to appeal to as many as possible? And then whatever subtext you want to create on the side, like you said yourself, you almost missed that. You almost missed, that piece around her expressing herself in a more sort of, a different way. So I feel like at the end of the day, what we're seeing, the connection between our historical, women in music and now is very little has changed. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to say about that.
Okay, so I said, okay, thank you. I'm just sitting here thinking this, you all bring up some very, very good points. So this is, again, something that is, historically that's been going on historically with Black women in music, right? And other art and other forms, right? Blues, what have you. I'm just thinking very quickly, like disco. I'm just thinking about some of the kind of like the queerness of disco a little bit, too.
Absolutely.
But I think the expression of it was very, like, a little bit different than it is now. But yeah, I'm just thinking about that. So question. I have another question, and that leads me to something else. Then, do you just thinking about artists in the past and current artists, right? Queen Latifah, the Brat, Lake Kelly 47. I'm thinking like Missy Elliott, right? Those are women who have tended to be more, I guess, quote unquote, covered up, right? Like in their presentation. But do you think for you as an artist, and then I guess for you in general, like extrapolating to the larger consumers of hip hop, do you think that makes a difference in how people hear and experience you? Also, someone mentioned, my Afro Carolina sister in the chat mentioned Rhapsody. So I think Rhapsody is also another artist who tends to be, again, a woman, a great lyricist who tends to be more quote unquote covered up. But does that affect the way that you hear the music or approach the music or the artist before you even listen? I'm gonna ask Derry, I'm gonna start with you on that. Does it make a difference? Someone's presentation.
I actually don't think it makes a difference, someone's presentation. At the base of everything, we're talking about female MCs, right? So it's power in being a woman, and no matter how you present yourself, however you're perceived, however they stereotype you, that's how you're seen anyway. It's not always a positive thing, the way that we're seen. So I don't really think, honestly, the way even if you're covered up and if you're not covered up, you're still a woman. And there's power in that. And there's also people who want to use their power over you and assert that power over you. So I don't think your presentation really affects, if they have that negative stereotype of what woman is, what being a woman is, being a strong woman is, then those stereotypes are going to be on you regardless of how you're dressed. So I don't really think, I don't really think that has an issue, just how you're perceived anyway.
Interesting. So someone in the, again, Tamika, interesting. Okay, you're talking about Lauryn Hill. I see you in the chat. I want you to say that out loud, what you're saying about Lauryn Hill, please.
Oh, I mean,
for Tamika, yes.
Yeah, I mean, Lauryn is an excellent example of someone who, we talk about class, we talk about, choice, I didn't answer on this question before about sexuality in terms of whether or not it's empowering to present your sexuality. And I was reading the definition of sexuality just to kind of like, remember it. And it's the process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's rights. And I think about sexuality as a tool that you can either choose to use or not. If it's not part of your sort of like your background, it's not part of your persona, maybe it's a tool that you're not necessarily leveraging to get to where you want to go. With Lauryn, she has a different background than, some of the artists that we've talked about previously. And perhaps that just wasn't the tool that she chose to use, and it became something that she was able to, present differently from the very beginning, without going there. She's definitely beautiful, and there definitely were some sexier shots of her, but not along the lines of some of the folks that were really also making their name at the time, like Foxy and Kim. So it's just interesting to me, how we approach the conversation as to whether or not a woman will be heard depending upon her choices. Especially when we have examples of women who have not only been heard, but just been here for a long time, without leveraging sexuality in the way that we originally talked about it as it relates to WAP.
Interesting. Okay, I see what you're saying. So, Lauryn, so you said so sexy in some ways, right? Sexy, but is it a case of being not too sexy or not being explicit or talking about sex in the lyrics? Is that the difference? You know what I mean? I don't know. It's hard it gets confusing for me sometimes when I even try to sort through it. Because, I've had a complicated relationship with hip hop. I mean, I love it as a genre, but I realize how very, very, very problematic it is. It became more problematic for me as I became more conscious and read more and, really looked at the patterns of like what people were, what was being said about women in hip hop, right? And space for it. But I guess my question is like, I mean, as a woman, like, I'm thinking about, honestly, Cardi B, right? Not in WAP, the video for WAP, she has her breast out, right? Like her breasts are out. She also had her breast out in her video for Money. Yes. Okay. But she's also a mother, right? And so, I mean, maybe she breastfed her child, you know, culture, maybe she breastfed her. So is it, you know, I mean, that's all part of it, right? But like, if you bare your breast to breastfeed, if you bare your breast in the video, is there a difference? I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but like, is there, you know, because some people have issues with women breastfeeding in public. So I don't know, Tamika, I don't know if are you still with us? I see your picture, but I don't see your video.
I am, and unfortunately,
okay.
I have to let you know that I have to log off in a second, but I will definitely be happy to answer any question you have.
Yes. Yeah. So my question about that is like, is it, I mean, you know, just the sensuality of the woman's body, like using your organs that are also, you know, visual representations of sexuality that can also be used for, you know, sustenance and nurturing. Like it makes it, I feel like, you know, how does that work for you as a mother? You said you were fine, you didn't have an issue with WAP. You're like, you know, this is nothing new. You weren't shocked. You weren't out, you know, you were like, okay, this is what it is. This is nothing new. Right. But I mean, especially, you know, as someone who has children, right? How do you see that? Like, how does it all work together?
To me, you know, it's what I consume versus my kids, you know, or my child. You know, it's a two. Yeah, I believe ultimately, like I said before, in our ability to express ourselves how we choose. And you know, we do have obviously, you know, women in this industry. All these rappers that you mentioned who are mothers, you know, and I also have a different relationship. I will, you know, I'll be honest, like I have a different relationship to sexual content now as a mother, but not from the standpoint that, you know, when my son is old enough, he can't consume what it is that he chooses and be able to use the filter that he's created for himself around, you know, what works for him in terms of content. But ultimately, you know, at the end of the day, I'm like, we should be able to express our full selves as women. You know, we have traditionally been denied that ability without, you know, without repercussion. So, you know, when it comes to women being able to, you know, express every part of themselves, I staunchly defend that. You know, and at the end of the day, like it's a choice as to how far you go with it. You know, I may not want to consume all parts of it, but your right to do that is 100% supported by me.
All right, thank you for that. And thank you so much for sitting in with us and offering these great insights there. I really appreciate you. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, it was great to meet you guys.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay. But with that, I guess following along with that, right? So just being, you know, humans being complex and being more than one thing. When I talk about kind of like the language that's been used to describe women, you know, by men and women in hip hop. So like there's been terms over the years, right, in hip hop, current parlance, words have been like skeezer, hoe, bitch, bot, queen, wisdom, right? And both women artists and the women who support them, you know, have sometimes found ways to reclaim these words, right? To use them and to try to redefine some of the negative connotations associated with them. But, you know, how do you think these words, especially as magnified, what has become a global art form, a global industry, and a billion-dollar industry, how has it affected women of color specifically? Those in hip hop, those, you know, women not in hip hop, not in the music industry. Yeah, Nancy, what do you think? Is Nancy still with us?
Hello, sorry, can you repeat that
again?
No
worries.
Sorry.
No worries. Did you get to hear the question?
No, I was caught up in the chat because it's pretty good in there too. I'm not gonna lie, it's really good in there. So I'm just reading up and catching up, and I'm sorry about that.
All right, no worries. I'm gonna have to check on the chat in a minute. No worries, we're gonna come back to that. But so I'm gonna read the question again. But if someone else wants to chime in, then we can come back to you. You know, it's up to you. But basically, just the words, the language used in hip hop, right, to talk about womanhood, skeezer. I'm gonna throw female in there too. Just female, not female MC, you know, female whatever, just female. Hoe, bitch, bot, wisdom, queen. right? You know, and there's been some reclamation, you know, from some women of these words, right? Some women can refer to themselves as thoughts, other women as thoughts or bitches. But just wondering, how do you think that these words, this language, right? For many years, we've been having this kind of language. Specifically, how does it affect women of culture? Like when that language is amplified by a global billion-dollar industry, you know, do you think it has an effect? Has it had an effect, you know, on women themselves, women of color, culture?
Honestly, that's actually a very tricky, tough question for me personally, because in hip hop, I catch myself repeating the lyrics, you know, washing the dishes, repeating the same old slander that I want to be told. It gets stuck to you. You get kind of used to it after a while, unfortunately. I don't think it's cool to treat each other like that. And even though we reclaim it, you know, because we want to get the power back, I don't think deep down inside we want to be referred to as a bitch. I don't think anyone like it. But we're like, you know, I've used it. I'm like, I've used it myself. I've reclaimed it myself. So I feel like a hypocrite even responding to this like this. It's actually, you gave me a lot of thought with this question. If anything, you're making me revise my own self with that question. I don't have an answer for you right now, clearly, but I can tell you that I don't think it's cool that we have all these sub names and men don't.
That's a very good point that we don't have. There's no right.
And including the word, I just want to interject, including the word male in front of whatever it is they do. We are never talking about male MCs. We are never talking about male DJs. We are never talking about, and what the word female does in front of these whatever artistic forms implies exception to the rule. So what I've been trying to do years ago, I stopped using this term female DJ because I think it allows for people to consider us to be comfortably underrepresented, right? And just also a novelty. So a lot of times I'm thinking about
Very true.
in the 90s, in the early 2000s, I was always invited to this like, oh, do you want to be a part of this all-female lineup of DJs? And the truth is we were being paid less, still are being paid less, right? So just thinking about that word, but also to go back to, you know, the people or the cis women who were not referring to themselves as female are Roxanne Shante, MC Light, Yo-Yo, Queen Latifah, Moni Love, Sweet Tea, right? Like those. So my question is like, when did female as a descriptor, you know, become a part of the conversation as well? Because I grew up in the golden era, you know, like Roxanne Shante and I were 14 when she released Roxanne's Revenge. She was 14 years old, right? And a battle rapper, you know, and just like and like masterful in her skills and technique. But anyway, I just say all of that to say, I'm just curious even about the use of the word female to describe women who are artists.
Lene, that's a really good point. I think it's interesting that when we talk about MCs, male is always the default. You know, when especially in terms of creativity, male is always the default. You never think of like a woman artist, visual artist as being the default. You never think of a woman MC, quote unquote, as being the default. So I think we are such a patriotic society that it is kind of interesting that women were always seen as she's dope but she's a girl. So that's something, you know, very, very interesting, Lene.
That's an excellent point. Walasia, any thoughts on that? Especially having worked with, I don't know, do the artists that you work with, especially the independent artists, do they struggle with the language? Do they use different language, same language, or what have your experiences been working the industry for a number of years? And have you noticed a point when that language changed? Or like, especially as we're talking about the word female?
I mean, definitely everyone I know from Jean Grey to Medusa, whenever they're packaged, and it's always by males who are writing or presenting it, whenever they're packaged as quote unquote femc, which is a word that I just truly despise. They do too. They hate to be called femc. And a lot of times, especially now where there's a lot more gender fluidity, as a matter of fact, the first time I ever experienced learning how to speak about someone who's non-binary is invincible from Detroit. When I first came in contact with her, I would always say, well, she's my favorite MC because she's the illest. I've seen her battle men and take everybody out. She's incredible. So then the next time I came across her was in a panel, and she had come out as non-binary, and I had to like realign myself to remember to refer to her by her pronouns. That was my first time ever having experience with what are pronouns. And now I would refer to Invincible, I would say they or them. And sometimes I have to catch myself, but it's important to them that they be addressed that way. That's their identity. And there's no, as far as I'm concerned, it would be very disrespectful to then use a previous name or to put them in the category because people's minds are not wide enough. They don't think about that. My friend Psalm1, PSALM1, she was signed to Rhymesayers, which is one of the top independent record labels, and they're being heavily boycotted now. There's an article in the Minneapolis paper about it, if anybody wants to read up on it. If you look at the hashtag boycott Rhymesayers, there's been a lot of sexual abuse and possibly even rape, alleged rape with some of the artists on the label. So it's much more to it than what happened to Psalm. But it began because she came out as queer, and they basically, said, well, we don't want you on our record label any longer. They were happy to package her when she was presenting in a more feminine way. They were happy to have her because she's a dope MC. So they were happy to have her on the label when she was, when they assumed that she was heterosexual and she just went with it. And when she presented, they would often promote those videos or photographs that she took where she was presenting more femme. And then when she came out, they straight up said it. They said, well, we don't want you here any longer. And she was removed from the label and released from her contract.
That's heavy. I'm just going to sit with that for a moment. That's very, very heavy. So it makes me think about recently, well, not recently. So in light of what R. Kelly, right? Surviving R. Kelly coming out and him finally facing some charges, right? There's been a documentary made about Russell Simmons and his, I guess I have to say, alleged history of sexual assault of women working in the music industry that he's come into contact with. He's out of the country in Bali, and I don't know if he'll be coming back. I'm guessing to avoid facing charges anytime. In light of, I guess, the hashtag Me Too movement and I guess more women working in creative fields, speaking up about the sexual assault, the abuse. And I guess I'm going to also include persons who are, gender fluid, non-binary in that too, people who are not in the dominant position in the industries, right? Dealing with these issues. Do you think that, is hip hop different? Is music different? Do you think that we'll see that ever happen really like in a large scale happen in hip hop? I know a few months ago, I watched an Instagram live with Jaguar Wright, who she called a lot of people out, about times when she's been sexually assaulted or her watching them sexually assault other people. Do you think that you'll see that in hip hop, or is the culture such that it's not going to happen? Or do you think people won't come forward or press charges? Anyone can take this. Walasia, Nancy, anyone could take this question. Aisha.
Honestly, Tracy, I don't ever see it really taking hold in Black culture and hip hop. It's just always the notion of, in Black culture, keeping our home business in the house and not putting Black men on Front Street because they have to go through so many things anyway. I think a lot of that just plays into protecting Black men, unfortunately, when they're just doing heinous things to Black women as well. So I don't ever see it taking off like it did in Hollywood. in the music industry at all. Unfortunately, I don't.
So you said Black culture and hip hop culture. Now, that's you know, I mean, there are a lot of people, you know, hip hop, you know, started with Black and brown folks.
Yeah, I know.
And Latino. Do you think it's more? So you think it's the music culture, hip hop culture, Black culture, or both? What do you? I mean,
I think it's a little bit of both, Tracy. Honestly, I mean, I know the history of hip hop, Black and Latino, but most of the Latino people, I think of them as Afro Latino anyway. So we all are of African diaspora, right? So I just kind of sometimes put it together. But even in Latino culture, you know, it's the notion of keeping, you know, inside business in the house, even things that are hurting you in your house, not really talking about it, you know, keeping it to, you know, tight to the vest, even when you're being harmed. So I think all of that kind of goes into it. Black culture, Latino culture, the idea of keeping things in the house even when they hurt you. So that's why I don't ever think the music industry will ever be outed like with Me Too, the way that Hollywood has been outed. I think we try to protect Black men and Latino men because we get so many things against us. But what, you know, who draws the line? Like, you know, if you're being hurt, then you need to say something. See something, say something, but it's not as easy as it would be maybe for a white woman versus a white male versus a Latino man versus, you know, a Black man versus a Black woman, Latino woman. So I don't think it's the same. I just don't think it's that easy for people of color to say someone's hurting me versus somebody else. I don't.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Megan Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez, and what happened recently.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. She protected him to her detriment, Tracy, you know? And I think as a Black woman, I still feel for Megan Thee Stallion in that situation. It really bothers me that she would put her own safety above, you know, protecting herself to protect a Black man. So it's a lot of layers to that.
That's communal learned behavior. Like you said, this is a part of how we all are sort of raised up. This expectation or this understanding that Black men's lives are so much harder than Black women's lives. And so we must protect them at all costs, even to our own detriment. And so we continue to uphold that. Now, when someone doesn't uphold it, the first thing we do is to fire shots at them. So right now, as Jaguar Wright is talking, there's probably far more truth to what she's saying than not. But what we're going to do is attack her because she looks wild right now while she's doing it. And the reason she looks wild is because her experiences have truly altered this woman. And if you pay attention to where she started, that's since childhood, and nobody has had her back. And the ways that she's been harmed has also made her complicit in the harming of others, which she speaks about. But then she's like, but now everybody gotta speak up. But because she looks wild in this moment, everybody's going to dismiss her and then continue to allow the same people who've been doing what they've been doing to keep at it and just let this all just quietly get swept under the rug, because that's also how we protect. Because keep it in the house should also mean we're going to handle it indoors, but we just close.
We don't touch it. Yeah, we don't touch it at all. And it gets even deeper than that. You know, this Black and Latino generational trauma. Like, some of us are just walking around in so much trauma that we don't even, you know what I mean? Like, it's so hard for you to speak up for yourself because you've been so abused and you grew up with, you know, centuries of abuse in our families, and it's deep. It's very deep. So I don't know, y'all.
Part of the other issue with Black trauma, Black generational trauma, is the expectation of it. And so to a degree, we don't feel the need to talk about it. This is just what Black life is. Why are you letting it bring you there? Right. And so what we're trying to do now is to begin to bust the doors open. But people are also like, but you don't get to tell nobody else's story. But all of our stories are so intertwined. And so this is going to be a reckoning that is beginning, but it's not going to go anywhere as far or as fast as we think right now, because again, right now, the face of it looks like she's coming undone. We're going to disregard her.
Yeah, but you can't dismiss, you know, even if Jaguar Wright is having mental health illness, you can't dismiss what she's gone through in that industry.
Shouldn't dismiss.
You know,
you should not dismiss, but
you shouldn't dismiss, but people will.
We don't understand that simply to have, and as a clinician, I'm not going to say mental illness. I'm going to say mental health needs. On purpose for the destigmatization of it, because we all have mental health needs, even if we're not where Jaguar is, right?
Respect.
But what we don't know how to do is to understand that multiple things can be happening at the same time. And so it's really easy for us to just simply say, oh, she crazy, and sweep her out the door, as opposed to recognizing she's going through something, she's gone through something, she's presenting in this particular way because, and also we should be doing something about these things. And also, how can we protect her through whatever it is that she has going on, so she can see her way to the other side, whatever that looks like for her. We don't get to determine that. But from the outside, with all the salaciousness of it, we get to laugh at her and we get to disregard her.
Yeah, it's horrible. With Jaguar, right? I've always been such a fan of Jaguar. And I always was like, why didn't she go to that next level? You know, it's like, she's fierce. I'm just praying for her healing, like I'm praying for everybody's healing. You know, I've gone through a lot in my life. My brother was, unfortunately, his life was taken in 2015. So I have trauma that I've gone through that I'm healing now at 46, going almost 47 next month. And I just want us, just as people of color, just to say things have hurt you. It doesn't make you weak. If you need help for your mental health, go for it. Therapy is a blessing, because therapy, when I do therapy, I'm not judged. I don't have family that's so emotionally attached to what has happened to you. They can't give you, you know, the 100%, just not judging, just letting you get it out. And I just want us as people of color to realize it does not make you weak. If anything, asking for help for your mental health is just like if you had cancer, you would get treatment. So, you know, that's why I just want to kind of get off my soapbox, but I just want us to embrace mental health, and that it's very important, and there's nothing wrong with asking for help.
I think one thing that I just want to add to that is like just the multiple forms of violence, and as it relates to this particular discussion of like women in the culture, one extension of violence is actually the erasure of women as being skilled artists, as being masters of the craft. And so it actually becomes really difficult to talk about the skill set of these women MCs and DJs and producers and promoters, because we actually haven't developed a narrative around what women have contributed to the art form in the last 30 years. So even thinking about the origin story that locates DJ Kool Herc at this party and the erasure of Cindy Campbell, his sister, who was responsible for being like, hey, I need to raise some money for school clothes. You have daddy's sound system. Let's get this party going. But also her and her girls who created the flyer, you know, and just this long standing history of women being erased from the dominant narrative, because it really is difficult for us to talk about what we've contributed because there is a missing document, right? There are missing conversations about what we have actually done to shape this art form. And so, and I'm about to leave, I'm standing in the rain in Amsterdam, but one of the things I just wanted to acknowledge, because I'm just thinking about, like, I know I said this before, but like what Roxanne Shante did at the age of 14 coming up against UTFO. I want to talk about her battle between Sparky D. You know, I want to talk about like the battle between MC Light and Antoinette. I want to think through Miss Melody and MC Light's verses on self-destruction. I want to think about not just Spinderella, but DJ Jazzy Joyce. You know, just like the women whose names don't get mentioned that have been a serious part of, or the work, right? So it's just like, And then as it relates to this piece around sexuality and accountability, I think Alice Walker gave us a good model on how to address it, and she was so thoroughly tortured for that she left the country and moved to Mexico because of how Black men in particular were responding to her, quote unquote, airing the dirty business. But I think what she did in that book, more so than the movie, was sitting here really sorry, you all. Can you all still hear me? Well, one of the things that she did in the movie, and in the book rather, because actually the movie struggled to do this, was actually showed us all of these layers. It wasn't just Mr. Abusive, right? It was Mr. who was abused by his father. It was his father who was formerly enslaved. It was, like just these long-standing histories. It was Suge's running away from the respectability of the Black church. It was also the sort of isolation that Mr. experienced when Suge and Celie went away, but also that he put money into, Celie's sister's sort of naturalization process and was welcomed back into the community in the book. And so part of what Alice Walker struggled with, she said, was the removal of redemption in this role and also the layered dealing of sexual violence and trauma in our community. So oftentimes when we talk about slavery, for example, we're gendering those conversations, and now we rarely talk about how Black men were raped, right? How Black women were hung, right? So like these conversations, I feel like just need a lot more nuancing, and I think it's important to move the conversations out of this sort of law and order notion of American justice, because it hasn't really been a good model for us, and I think that there's some real good just like community work that we need to do. But beyond that, I just really want to just like big up these women, thinking about Yo-Yo and thinking about Queen Latifah and her relationship with Daddy O and, just like what they did. And I'm thinking of the years 88 and 89 in particular as key to us understanding how we arrived at a Cardi B, how we arrived at a Foxy Brown, how we arrived at who I think is one of the greatest rappers in the world, and that is a Lauryn Hill. Where do we come from? What is the record? Where is there evidence? Who's writing about women? So I just want to say that on my way out, but I appreciate the conversation. And
thank you, Lene.
Lene, thank you so much for that. Oh my goodness, thank you.
So much.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
It's a blessing. Thank you.
Thank
Blessed
you all.
to have you. Thank you always.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Lene. You were dope.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Peace.
Peace.
So that's an excellent point. I'm glad Lene mentioned that about Alice Walker's book, The Color Purple, because it is so different. The story of how Celie and Mr. resolve and actually become friends. And it's a process. And there is redemption in the book. And it's so different from the movie. I'm so glad she brought that up. And it brings me to a question I wanted to ask all the panelists. I'd like to hear from all of you about this. Just thinking of that, so we're talking about, a group of people, a collective who are making art and expressing themselves and dealing with this history of trauma, ongoing trauma, past trauma, intergenerational trauma, epigenetic trauma, and, trying to exercise it, via art or, even, exercise it or amplify it, in art, I really think is what we see a lot or what it comes down to. So I guess my question is now, reimagining hip hop or thinking about different possibilities or imagining an Afrofuturist version of hip hop. Where does love come in? Is there space for love? What would that look like in hip hop? Is there space for love in hip hop? Has there been love in hip hop? Is there space for more love? Is there space for something different? As far as presentations, discussions, feelings about love in hip hop as a genre. Malaysia, anybody, Aisha?
Go ahead.
When you say love in hip hop for real, and I hate that this even happened, the first thing that came up for me was Papoose and Remy. And then what does that even mean? Like I think about what was it, Black Power or whatever it was, and the song was so corny, and I wanted it to be better. And I was like, is this the best we can do? I don't really know about that, but we don't actually have we don't have a blueprint for that all the way, but I think part of that is because hip hop is a microcosm of what's happening in Black and Brown communities. And while there is love within Black and Brown communities, we got work to do. And I think when the work is done at home, whatever that means or whatever that looks like, it will then be perpetuated in our art forms, which will include hip hop, I hope. But I think going back to something that somebody else said in the chat earlier, with the idea of independence, if we can separate ourselves from corporate machinations of hip hop, maybe there's room to be able to do far more exploration than what we receive per radio streams and all of that kind of stuff. If we can get away from that, maybe we have a chance for it. I don't know.
Malaysia?
Yes. I have a song and an experience. Actually, it's an artist that I now manage. And this is how I came to decide that that I wanted to do management again, because I was married to a very famous artist for a long time and did his management for a decade. And it was a place I never, ever thought that I would return to. But this artist, he's called Noah the Flood, Nowaah, The Flood, and he's out of Dallas, Texas. And he had an album called Chill Life Mathematics, and it got kind of famous because Nas somehow stole the album cover, and Kanye West somehow took a beat that was on this album, which was very independent, very underground. Those two things happened kind of simultaneously right after the record came out. So it was very questionable, and it kind of like threw him into the public eye. But he has a song called Peace Mama. And it was a song where he kind of like spoke to, part of it may be fact, part of it may be fiction, but he spoke to relationships with the mothers of your children and relationships ending and kind of ending them in a positive way. And even the title, Peace Mama. How many times do we have a hip hop song where you have men exploring their prior relationships that have ended in a positive way, in an explorative way, where they're not saying, oh, fuck this bitch that I used to be with. You know, that's the majority of a song that we hear about an ex or about a failed relationship. It's always going to be the B word and she's a hoe now and all of those kind of things. So just even the title, Peace Mama, and the content of the song, it kind of threw me, and I said, okay, hey, there's a lot more to explore with this artist. And I have some, belief in the power of his words and of the songs that he's choosing to present, because, like I said, usually it's in a disrespectful tone, even with current women. People, there's been people who have spoken badly about the mothers of their children in the public eye, in songs and in
Future.
magazines.
Like Future. He's always very disrespectful. Exactly. So, Malaysia, you're dope. I think there's definitely room. It's so much more room for love in hip hop, y'all. I don't see it. In 2020, like I said, I'm a woman of a certain age. I'm 46, very proud. And Houdini was talking about one love. It was so much more loving in early hip hop than it is now. I don't know. It's a lot more room for it. I don't know if we'll ever really get love back in hip hop like we used to. And I don't know. I think it's interesting. I would love a lot more love, but let's face it, even quote unquote R&B now, it's not even really R&B. They're not even talking about love and R&B anymore. Who sucked the love out of R&B? That was a joint, yeah. That was a joint growing up in the 90s with Jagged Edge and Drew Hill. Those are beautiful songs. So I don't know, it's just, you gotta be careful too, as a writer and a person who knows the power of words and a PR person. When there's not love in music, there's not love in the world. So it's just like, we gotta put so much more love in the world. 2020 has been a very rough year. I don't see the love like I used to among a lot of different people, right? Not just Black people, just not Latino people, but just the world, period. And we just got to get back to talking and respecting people again. And love in hip hop needs to be please be infused back into it, because some of the stuff some of these younger artists are talking about, I love a dope beat like everybody else, but after a while it gets so played out, like you're not talking about nothing. And I grew up, you know, hip hop in the late 1980s, early 90s was talking about something, even though we had different genres. De La Soul was dope, Tribe was dope, Queen Latifah was literally wearing crowns. And as a young Black woman, growing up in the DC area during that time, it just made me feel so powerful to see a Black woman say, I'm a queen, and this is how I present myself. So fast forward to WAP, it's just like, you know, of course, I want you to be creative and express yourself how you see fit. But when the younger generation of Black women and Latino women only see that, there's no real, you know, balance. That's a problem. And I think that's where the love is just being sucked out of hip hop.
I think there's room for love. And I think the reason why it's lacking lately is because this new generation is sampling from the 90s. Rather than sampling shit from the 70s. And then the 70s was the love movement era. That's why we had Tribe and Dayla, and they gave us Butterflies with Bonita and all that. It made you feel all giddy inside. You don't get that no more because they're not sampling that era enough, I feel. That's why I try to bring out with my art, like Sade and Minnie Riperton, like trying to remind the generation of today, yo, check these people out, because they may just bring that love movement juice into your music that you're creating these days, because that's it. Everything that you said was so right on. It's just, it's not there lately anymore. And I think the newer generation is just sampling the raunchy shit. They're just getting the beats and trying to get the style and the vibe of this person, but they're not exploring where that really originated from to begin with. So it becomes this dry content now. Like WAP. Like I love these women. I love the way they look. I love that that Cardi kind of sort of represents me somehow. So and then then you see this and you're like, girl, all this shit going on right now, and this is what you had to say right now.
Yeah.
And I love it. I'm for it. But right now, you got the biggest platform right now.
I totally agree with you, Nancy. I totally agree with that. But on a funny note, guys, really quickly, I try not to, I'm a lot of fun, a funny person. I'm not always heavy. But what I think is funny is some of these artists are, when they start sampling your generation, that's when you know you're getting a little bit older. When they're sampling Jodeci, I'm like, that's my high school. Like, they're sampling my generation. That's why I know I'm getting a little older. It just makes me feel some kind of way, I must admit. But it is kind of interesting to hear, come and talk to me, or, Jodeci or Boyz II Men, The End of the Road. And I'm like, all these samples are so interesting, because I grew up and I was in high school when these came out. So I just thought that was kind of funny. I'm like, when they start sampling you, and not my parents, not my mom's generation, I'm getting a woman of a certain age.
All right, thank you. So I hear you. There's room for love. And the chat, I'm just looking at the chat right now.
It's hot.
There's a lot of people I like what's going on in the chat. So actually what I like to do at this time, if it's okay with the producer, if we can have comments or questions from folks who are attending. If you have something you'd like to say or thoughts you have on any of the comments that were made today, or if you have a question for any of the panelists or for myself, let's do that now.
I would just hey DJ Monday, Blue. Hey. So one thing I wanted to say, first of all, y'all are dope. I'm enjoying this. I was like, I thought I was gonna get off, but I'm all in.
Yes.
I was gonna say, and maybe we can. There was two things I wanted to address about the mental health piece and sexuality piece, and one was Cardi. Since we're talking about Cardi just put out a recent video where because you know we all knew that she publicly filed for divorce and is going back and forth with Offset, right? And she did this video. Where she was like, y'all, I'm a crazy bitch. You know what I'm saying? She was like, I'm a crazy bitch. She was like, one day I want this, one day I want that. Like really just talking about like the reality of her being young and like deciding on some shit one day and then being like, and so she's showing herself in the face of the public about like, damn, like this is me going through my own shit. So I wanted to get, and with her being under 30, not that she doesn't have some thought process, but I'm looking at like when we're talking about the mental health and the things that we're able to talk about on a song, like how much of that do we look at, you know, like somebody like a Cardi or like Nicki said on a I don't know if it was a Grammy show, but she said that she was contemplating committing suicide. And then she said she didn't want to do it because everybody was going to know about it on the news. And I was like, did we catch that? Like, did we? And so when we talk about the experience, but I never heard that in a rap. You know what I'm saying? I've never heard that in any of Nicki's raps. I've never heard Cardi talk about the back and forth of her own mental health on a rap. So the real experiences that what do you think about the women and their real experiences that they're not talking about?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a very good point, because dealing with this in real life, but it's not reflected in the lyrical content at all. It's a very good point. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Thank you. Thank you so much, Hyllis. I appreciate that. Anyone else?
I guess Tracy, I wanted just to bring out the subject we were talking about earlier before, you know, during sound check before we came on, and that Megan Thee Stallion can have more than one layer. Like she can twerk, but then I loved her in SNL, guys, during the middle of, you know, she's sitting up Savage. And then you're hearing Tamika Mallory bring Daniel Cameron to the carpet for not honoring the sister Breonna Taylor. So I love that Megan Thee Stallion can twerk in one sense and be woke in the other. And I think Black women and women in general have many layers, and that shouldn't be, you know, a news flash that I'm woke and I'm sexy also. So that's, you know, and I also like that Megan Thee Stallion did a New York Times op-ed piece on protecting Black women. I love that this conversation is starting to build and get there. But as a Black woman, I have to be honest, in America, an African-American woman, I haven't always felt protected in my culture. You know, as a micro, you know, macro American culture, but then as an African American culture as well. So I think that's great that we're starting that conversation, Tracy. I think Megan Thee Stallion is the bee's knees, you know, but I also pray for her on a daily basis, just as a sister, you know, just as a younger sister who's been traumatized by that situation. With that one situation with Tory Lanez, but also coming out of so much other trauma. And I just love Megan Thee Stallion. I think she's interesting, very interesting. And she's I like Cardi B's playfulness, but she's really not my vibe. I think I'm not more into her rap. I think I'm more into her personality, if that makes sense. Like I love Cardi just saying what the hell she want to say. Like, I'm a Sag, I'm a fire sign, so I'm here for it. But I don't know. I kind of also like that the younger generation of Black women, Latino women are saying, this is who we are, accept it. If you don't like it, that's just on you. So it's a lot of layers, Tracy. I'm kind of digging some of it, but I have to be honest, like I'm not here for all of it. And I'm a straight shooter. You know, I rock with you or I don't rock with you. I'm a Sag. Ain't no real gray with me. Like I'm either, you know, I'm either all in or I'm all out. So that's kind of how I'm seeing it, y'all.
I don't want to be contradictory to anything, but for some reason, I don't see Cardi B like a hip hop artist. She's more pop star to me.
You know, like she don't
respect
seem
that.
like the type of person that like listen to the OG shit and actually knows her Wu-Tang or her lyrics. Meg Thee Stallion is that girl. Yeah. And that's the difference. And they're trying to mold her a little bit too much into that. It seems to me, she's more like a little bit more like us. Is that
Great
when
point.
I mean us, like more herself? But I guess going into that freaking field, they really be on your ass to change you like entirely. You know, you can really tell. So I can totally agree with you. I love Cardi B. I'm not putting her down. She's dope. She's funny. She's speaking out there for us. She's herself. But for music, it's more like I see it like a commercial. When I see one of her videos, like here goes a commercial, I'm down for it. But as far as me bumping it in the car, no.
Yeah,
and I'm not dissing her because I respect her. I don't want to come off like that, but I agree with you. I just wanted to chime in real quick because it's crazy that you know, I don't think she's hip hop. I just don't. Like I saw one post of her promoting some sneakers that she did, and she was dressed all fly, like you know, hip hop style. And I was like, man, I wish she did that more often. Like, you know, I fell in love with that side of her because she's always so perfect and done up. It's like, who are you, girl? Who are you?
Great points. Great points.
That's a very good point. I that's very interesting. That counterpoint of Megan versus Cardi, right? As Megan being like more like coming from the true school or more in that tradition, right? Of you know what we traditionally think of with hip hop and rap and MCs, and then Cardi being just pop. Like Cardi B being kind of like an MC Hammer. Like, you remember MC Hammer was considered pop, right?
But MC Hammer was tight though. He was fucking with Tupac, so he wasn't on that commercial tip either. Cardi B's more like a commercial, and I say that respectfully. Like, I don't even want to brag on her because I like her a lot, but I can't take her serious. Like, oh, I'm gonna go bump this new Cardi album right now and listen to what she's gonna say, and I'm gonna bump her beats. Nope. More like I'm gonna watch her. I want to see what she has on, and I want to hear what she say because she's gonna make me laugh. She's gonna bring me a good vibe or bring some truth, you know. But as far as like really listen, like a Lauryn Hill, like, you know, even though it's just that one album she did.
Miseducation is phenomenal.
Like right. It's not like that though. It doesn't take you there. And I wish she would, because I bet you she could. It's just that the way they make you do things. I bet you if Cardi came out of the mainstream and did something with the underworld with somebody that we respect, that shit would be mad fire. But they don't allow it. And I think that's a bunch of bullshit. But you know, that's a whole other topic. Excuse me for going off.
Yeah. Totally fine. No, it's very relevant. Don't worry, don't need to apologize at all.
Tracy, if I can take 1 second to speak about this, because this is one of the most important points of why I'm here, is that although, you know, I love listening to all the women who are able to make it into the mainstream, I support all women, femmes. I want everyone to make it. However, Cardi B, Nicki Minaj, they don't need our support financially. They don't need our support really as fans. It's nice if we are and we can enjoy a lot of things. I'm much more interested, kind of to piggyback off what Daria said, I'm a lot more interested in the backstory of Megan Thee Stallion and what she's going to do as she continues her education, as she continues her outreach, I believe she's someone who will make money and make foundations and provide scholarships. And to that point, I would love to support her, but she doesn't require my support. There are so many women on the independent and underground scene. We don't hear about them. We don't talk about them enough. Like the only time I write anymore, I don't write really for a living anymore. So when I started blogging again and doing my newsletter again, I only talk about women and femmes. I don't address music that males are making. There's no reason for it. So I'm exposing women on the underground who are still making videos, their Bandcamp links, because they truly do need our support. And it's a little bit hard to find the music sometimes. And there's a wide spectrum. If you enjoy the women who rap more about sex acts and who are more down and dirty on a Little Kim type of tip, or who speak about
Foxy Brown.
There are underground and independent women who are saying those raps and who are even presenting themselves in that style, they require our support. Like, I want to implore you to never, ever buy mainstream music. There's no reason for anyone who's listening to this conversation at this point to be dipping into their pocketbook and paying money towards anything on a major label at all. Go to people's band camps. There are even women who are like, within Griselda, which is like the top gangster rap right now, there's a poetess called Keisha Plum. There's a woman called Shay Noir that's affiliated with them. She raps, she's really dope, and she's making some of her own beats now too. And then they put out a woman artist as well, the quote unquote, you know, like first lady of Griselda type of artist. So even on they are out there. They're affiliated with Rock Nation. They're affiliated with Shady and Eminem's management companies and record labels. They do have a major push, but let's support those women because they're not heard. That, like, if you spend money directly with them, you're going to continue their rising up. Maybe they're going to make it to the mainstream one day. Maybe they're not. But there are so many independent women, and it can be hard to find the music, but I just want to kind of push you guys in that direction, that please directly support anytime you can. If you can find a band camp, or even if you really enjoy a record, you can hit them up, hit the artist up on social media and get their Cash App. Send them the $10 that way. But they really need the support.
Oh, thank you.
Great point,
Malaysia, for that. Do you have a blog? Do you have a newsletter where we can find out about these artists? Do you promote artists via newsletter, or is there another way that we can, like, if we connected with you, in which way could we find out about these artists?
I do have a newsletter. It's called Ladies First, Ladies First. I did put the link in the chat.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Anytime if you go on my Twitter, the majority of the music that you'll see me pushing and promoting, even if I don't work directly with those artists, like my sis Lyric Jones, she has an amazing record coming out on October 27th, and it's just lyricjones.com, and she's been affiliated with like Planet Asia and Gold Chain Music, but she also drums and sings and writes all her music, and she's really a versatile artist. I think it's going to be a versatile record, and when you go to her site, you be supporting her directly. So I promote her, although she's not a client of mine. I really go all out for women. So on all my social networks, you'll always see me promoting them, and I'll put the newsletter link. I publish at least once a week. I'll put it in there too. And I talk about not only rappers, but also producers who are women and femmes. And I think that's an important conversation for another time too.
No, I think it's excellent. I too am very much into supporting. I feel like, pay women, pay femmes, pay women. Yeah, so I really, really feel you on that. So do we have any other questions from any of our participants? Comments, thoughts?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Yay.
Hi. How you doing?
Hello.
Today.
I am a woman of a particular age. I'm 46, so I have
same age.
Right. I've watched the evolution of hip hop, but I do see the younger generation. They are reaching back. It's a ton of reaction channels happening on YouTube. And some of them are going back to, the early days of hip hop. But the question I want to ask is, what do we do with Azalea Banks?
What?
Ooh, I'm not touching that. I'm good.
Azalea Banks. And what makes you ask that question, I guess? More specifically, in what sense? Because she has a history. I'm not sure if everyone here knows. So specifically, what do you mean you ask that question?
Azalea Banks is, without all the shenanigans, she's actually talented. She is actually a talented artist. She is artistic. It's just the antics and the shenanigans and the foolishness in her mouth. And it's clear that she got something going on, but people just dismiss her. Like how they try to do Jaguar right, like how they did Kaya for years. continue to. So
Well,
Yeah,
what do we do? Are we just throwing her away, or what are we doing?
well, I'm
That's
gonna answer this question first. And if any of the other panelists have anything they'd like to add or say, please feel free to do so. And one of the past 2 weeks or so, and looking at kind of what happened with O'Shea Jackson, aka Ice Cube, right? And his, dealings with the current administration in the White House, and then Curtis Jackson, aka 50 Cent, right? And his comments about who he plans to support in the election, the early voting's happening in the election that's happening right now, right? The presidential election. I mean, she's talented, right? There are people that feel that, 50 Cent and Ice Cube are well within their rights to say what they did and to speak as they did, to feel as they do. So I wonder, when do we extend the same graciousness to Black women, to Black femmes, to femmes, women, When do we extend the same graciousness? I guess that's where I am with like, say, Azealia Banks, or, other people who might find. For me, it's challenging, like, especially as a DJ, when you think about, well, whose music am I going to play if I have to not play the one who has said something, out of left field, said something that I or other people may deem crazy. For me, I draw the line at people who hurt children. That's where like hurt people who are underage, who hurt minors, and who hurt children, right? So that's kind of where I had to draw the hard line about whose music I will play. But again, that question makes me think of, like, just again seeing these, men who are also, MCs, working hip hop, in the entertainment industry. When do Black femmes get the same consideration that they get?
I don't
Tracy,
think Black women. Oh, I'm sorry.
I know I'm still here. It's hilarious. I'm in an Uber, but I just. It's hilarious. I'm in an Uber because I wanted to still listen, but I knew I couldn't fully participate. But I really appreciate what Tracy just said, because just before we get into the sort of sensationalism around Azealia Banks, I just want to say she is an incredible MC. She is an incredible MC, and she plays with house music and salsa and merengue and hip hop, like. And part of what happened and what happens with her, she got punished too for being a dope MC and also being dark skinned. So it's interesting to see her relationship.
Yep.
Yeah, the colorism, but colorism in conversation with her skills, right?
Yeah.
Like, and how that upset a lot of men in particular. Like, she is a beast. She is a beast, and actually, I would love to see her as a battle MC. Because I think that she brings it in a very important way. But I think a great reference for her is the interview she did with the Breakfast Club a couple of years ago. But she makes me think of Toni Morrison's character Pecola in The Bluest Eye, and just that, like, she is the product of what it means to learn that Blackness is ugly, what it means to learn that dark Blackness is especially ugly, what it means to learn that dark Blackness on a woman's body is even more ugly, right? She's holding all of that. She's holding all that on the stage. And all I want to say is, like, we are lucky, if you are someone who is able to do that, to be able to control whatever your shit is. And we are lucky that our shit is not on the world stage, because like, all of us are holding some real shit if you have, been indoctrinated.
Very true.
So I just want to say that. I just want to acknowledge that, yes, she has all these things going on, but she's a beast of an MC.
Thank you so much for that. Oh my goodness. That's funny. A voice from the dark. I appreciate you. Thank you for hanging in there. So actually, what we're gonna, this has been so good. Now I have more questions, because colorism, and we didn't even. That's a whole.
Colorism. That's a whole thing, Tracy. Yes.
Trauma support group is that's a number of things. But I just want to say, first and foremost, thank you so much to all of you for. All of the attendees for being with us here today, for having the chat was on fire. I couldn't keep up with everything, but for being so present and engaged with us. To all the panelists, thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you for having us.
Just amazing, some really great insights. So some days I'm going to have to sit with. I'm actually sitting with how am I going to reframe my language around how I refer to artists moving forward? You know, I just have things I need to, you know, think about, making sure that I'm connecting with people, making sure I'm not misgendering them. You know, and again, doubling down on my support of independent artists and making sure that using whatever platform I have to amplify dope music, no matter who's making it, right? If it's dope, it's dope. So thank you, Walasia, Lene, Daria, Aisha, Nancy, and Tamika's not here with us anymore. Thank you very much to the Grand Illusion for producing this and to keeping this all running as smoothly as it did today. Thank you so much. So yeah, we might, who knows, stay, you know, just follow all of these amazing people on social media. I hope you got the links that were posted in the chat throughout today's presentation. And keep an eye out. Follow the Grand Illusion 1975 on Instagram. You can follow me at DJ Monday Blue. Who knows, we might be doing more things, different things. So, you know, the work continues. And you all are just some very fly creative people. So there's just going to be more work. You know, Lene, we're going to be looking for your book next year. We're going to be looking for your book next year, Malaysia. So yes, so right now in about 5 minutes, about 5 minutes, by 2:05, we're going to head over to my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/DJ Monday Blue. Got a little after party with DJ Reborn and myself. We're going to play, MCs who happen to be women. All right, and we're gonna play their music over there for the next couple of hours. Just have ourselves a good little dance party. So you can leave a tab open, keep it open in the background if you have other things to do today. And again, once again, thank you so much for attending the story of WAP. I hope you took something away from it, gave you some insight, some food for thought, things to think about, how you move through the world and your relationship and engagement with this art form that we love, right? And have this long, complicated relationship with. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you. Thank you so much.